Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are in the book of Psalms, and we're looking at Psalm 13. 4 times, David says, how long? How long? How long? How long do I have to wait? And he feels that the Lord has abandoned him. Not only is he abandoned by faithful men, he feels abandoned by even God himself. And he says, how long will you forget me? How long will you hide your face from me? And this feeling of abandonment is common. All of us have times when we feel that God has abandoned us. And as he says, will you forget me forever? Not just in this one moment, but forever. And we are most in danger of lapsing, of falling down in our faith, not often when we have the sharpest trials, but when we have the longest ones, all right? And he says, you've hidden your face from me, and it seems that your blessings for me, Lord, have come to an end. And so he says, I'm wrestling with my thoughts, my fears. I'm wrestling day to day with sorrow that is buried in my heart. And you think about times we go through dark thoughts, uncontrollable fears, right? And we just keep pondering or ruminating on our failures, and we plunge into depression or an emotional funk. He says, how long will my enemy triumph over me? And so in verse 3, starting in verse 3, he basically commands God practically, right? Not quite, but look on me, answer me, give me light. He says, you're the Lord, my God. You're my God, and I'm your child. And so he asks God to turn his face towards him and answer his prayers. And he talks about my enemy, my foe, but the enemy of God's faithful people is God's enemy, his foe. And as Christians, we do have a great spiritual enemy, right? Who is worse than any human enemy imaginable, and that is the devil, who's seeking to devour us, to pull us into despair and doubt. And so he goes on in verse 5. It's interesting is that at the end of verse 4, they celebrate that. The enemy celebrates that he overcame the faithful man. He rejoices when I fall. And really, it is that time of prayer in verses 3 and 4 that's the turning point, because then we get to verse 5. But, and this is the but of the gospel, right? This is the but that God is going to do something. And it's the opposite of the problem. But I trust in you. I trust in your unfailing love. And all of this trusting in the Lord is because God is faithful. He knows that God still loves him and is faithful to him, right? And so too for us, when we pray and we're going through difficulties, we need to get to this reassurance, this confidence in the gospel. Where my foe rejoices in my downfall, but my heart rejoices that I've been saved in the salvation that comes from God. In verse 6, I sing praise of the Lord. David has recovered his trust in God. And, all of this reminds us we need to be praying consistently and urgently, especially when we feel abandoned or by ourselves. We need to cry out to God as we get to the last verse, because I know the Lord has been good to me, and God has been good to me in the past, and he'll be good to me again in the future. Well, hey, thanks, friends, for listening. Please like and share and subscribe so that you and others can see this devotion. Have a blessed day.